Now that OpTic are your 2024 Call of Duty World Champions, let's dive into the other Call of Duty League champions from recent past and compare where OpTic is compared to these teams. Don't worry, we will do a Call of Duty World League video as well. I'm separating the two just because of the amount of teams that there are. But today, we're going to be diving into the Call of Duty League champions and ranking them from best to worst. Make sure if you agree with my list to let me know in the comments below. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below. If you like the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Call of Duty content. Let's dive into this video. So we're starting with Call of Duty 2020, and for the rest of the video, we're going to be using breakingpoint.gg, so shout out to those guys. However, they do not have any coverage for the 2020 World Championship. I think they started in Cold War, and they didn't go back and do what they didn't have. So we have to look to codesports.fandom.com/wiki/Call of Duty League Championship 2020. Shout out to them as well, though, for having some awesome content and information that we need. Dallas Empire were your 2020 champions with a roster of Clayster, Shotzi, Hook, Illy, Crim6, coached by Rambo, and they beat the Atlanta FaZe in the World Championship. This is Atlanta FaZe's first of a couple second place finishes, and they had a BZ, Simp, Celian, Major Maniac, Priest, so on and so forth. To kind of break down this team, you look at who they had on this team. So this is the only 5v5 matchups that we had in the Call of Duty League. You had Clayster and Crim6, who are legendary Hall of Fame type players. I mean, both of those guys are clearly top 5, and if they're not top 5, then your list is flawed. You have up-and-coming superstars, like at the time, Shotzi, Illy, and Hook. And Hook had been around a little bit, but he was still very young and coming into his own as a player. And Shotzi even won MVP that year, which was his rookie year, which is insane. I don't know if that's ever happened before, that a rookie has come in and won not only Rookie of the Year, but MVP of the season in the same year. So Shotzi was on fire. It's kind of hard to scale this team compared to the other rosters since they're all 4. However, because of players, momentum, and just kind of how it is, I don't want to be the guy to say COVID, online cheese or whatever. But because they competed online, this was not a LAN tournament. If you look at a LAN tournament, look at some of these other rosters. I mean, Scump, Formal, the Huntsman roster. This roster could have probably made a run with a LAN performance. A lot of these players are noticeably better on LAN. Arcides, Envoy, Prestini was still coming off a World Championship the year before. Scump and Formal, of course, legendary. Even OpTic Gaming LA, they got top 5. But they had TJ, Kenny, who was Quavo that year, Slasher, Hollow, who's really not been around since, and Draza, who is now a superstar in the league, with Dashy on their bench, which was insane. These guys, a lot of them have a true record, TJ, Kenny, Slasher, of being better on LAN. So I think that this whole championship could have gone different on LAN. So with that all being taken into consideration, the online factor, 5v5, not being able to compare to the 4v4 as well, we're just going to go ahead and put the 2020 championship in 5th place, which is last place. All right, here we are for our 4th place team of our top 5 there's only 5 champions. So of our top 5 champions of the Call of Duty League World Champions, we have the LA Thieves. Now, I know this might be a little odd because this really was a good team. And at the end of the season, they were playing like lights out. And as you can see, I mean, they beat the Atlanta FaZe 5-2. I still think this map was, as you can look at the maps, it was still a pretty close run. FaZe really did give it the best they could. And I think the Thieves were just too much for them to bear. Because, I mean, if I'm looking at the Thieves were up 4-0 against the Atlanta FaZe. And Atlanta, I remember specifically, it was Arcides who came out of nowhere and just balled out on this Bocage search and destroy and literally helped bring them back. Then they win a round 5 control in Berlin and then lose a round 11 in search and destroy that the LA Thieves would win. I mean, just imagine, it's 4-2 at the time. They win that search and destroy. It's 4-3. You never really know what could happen. But the Thieves managed to pull it through, and they were able to be crowned champions of the Call of Duty League. Now, the reason I have them in 4th place is obviously they had a pretty dominant performance in the Call of Duty Championship, and you had big legendary players such as Kenny, Octane, be able to finally get them a championship ring, and then the young superstars, Draza and Envoy, be able to really make a name for themselves as superstar players. And I just think, though, still, if you look at the overall dominant season that these champions had, this team specifically, it was a very up and down year. I don't know if a lot of people remember the specifics of the Los Angeles Thieves, but they really did have a rocky start to the season. Major 1, Major 2, Major 3, really not much at all. I believe in Vanguard, we had the Pro AM tournament and we had a classic, the classic kickoff. However, for the overall the season, they did not do amazing in the tournaments, but they were able to pull through Major 4, win Major 4. They finally got things together, and then they just took that momentum from Major 4 and ran with it into Champs and were able to win Champs. They still even had a rocky start to Champs. They were, I think it was against Boston, but a Game 5, Round 11 type moment from going to the losers bracket, and that would have changed everything. And so because of that, and just the aspect of the other few teams that we're going to go over, I do think that in terms of just being one of the best champions that we've had in the Call of Duty League, the LA Thieves are just going to have to be the 4th best. For the 3rd best Call of Duty League champions, we're going to put the New York Subliners in Modern Warfare 2. To the credit of the New York Subliners, I mean, they balled out. I mean, look at this. Plus 29 from Skies, plus 31 by Kismet, plus 20 by Hydra. Priesthood going positive, but doing everything that he needed to do to win this championship. And you can't ask for a more dominant performance by New York. I mean, 5-0ing the Toronto Ultra. And I mean, look at these scores: 250 to 84, 6-1, 3-0. Finally, a close hard point, and then just a takeaway with the Surge, and New York was crowned your champions in Modern Warfare 2. The reason I have them in 3rd place under the other 2 teams that we're going to talk about is specifically for the fact that I don't want to take away from their win. However, you do think 5-0, 1 or 3 things have happened. Either A, they are just that much better than the other team, which I don't believe was actually that true because Toronto had a really good team that year. 2, they were able to just get an advantage on Toronto by map advantages, maybe playing maps that they're better at or playing, catching Toronto on their weaknesses, sure. And then the 3rd one is just what I think actually happened, and that is at the same time that New York started to get a little hot, Toronto just fell off. I mean, this was like an insane bad performance that we had. I mean, look at this. Insight went positive, literally just 1. Hixie we knew wasn't going to put up the best numbers, but he really was a valuable piece for that Toronto team during the Modern Warfare 2 season. Kleenex and Scrap, your 2 superstar slayers, I mean, just awful KDs, did not ever get anything going. And so you really just wonder, did New York win because they were that much better than Toronto, or did Toronto just choke and fumble the bag that much? And I think there's a mixture of that. I do think New York was obviously good enough to get to the championship, and they were playing on fire. But I do think that it was just a little bit as comfortable as it was, not just because they were that good, but because Toronto just showed up, choked, did not show up to play. So I'm not saying that New York only won because Toronto was able to fall off that far, but I think the dominant performance that they made was because of Toronto falling off. Thus, even though it's a very dominant performance, 5-0, I think there were other factors in play that weren't just New York was that good of a team. So I'm going to put them as the 3rd best CDL champions that we've had. This is where I'm going to be surprising some people. If you know me, I've always cheered for the Atlanta FaZe. I've always, not just the Atlanta FaZe, but even FaZe Clan. I've been cheering for them since Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. But as a shout out to my friend Michael, I've always tried to say that I can be neutral. I can be a guy who is not that borderline here or there. I want to make sure I'm always being able to be honest and truthful about what I think. So with that being said, I think that the Atlanta FaZe and their dominant championship year and their championship against the Toronto Ultra in Cold War is going to be the 2nd place team in our Call of Duty League champions list. I think throughout the entire season, they were a much more consistent team than any other Call of Duty League team we've had, probably more dominant than any other Call of Duty team that we've had. However, I'm going to credit some of that once again I'm going to have to give them the same honest perspective that I gave the Dallas Empire. A lot of their major championships that they won that year were online. Even now to this very day, after having Slasher, after Arcides, and now having Draza after Slasher, you can still see Atlanta FaZe be absolutely dominant online in Call of Duty. Their really only bad spell in online Call of Duty was Modern Warfare. And I believe that they won Major 1, Major 3, and Major 4, and then Champs. But only 2 of those wins were on LAN, and the other 2 were online. So there is no doubt that this was probably one of the most dominant teams in Call of Duty history. I do discredit some of it to being online. I hate to be that guy, but the fact that they were able to win a tournament on LAN in the regular season and then win Champs on LAN as well, I'm definitely going to put them at number 2 because of how dominant they were all year. And so I understand that they are probably the most dominant team in Call of Duty history, and I loved watching this FaZe team play. However, I just think that when you add that some of their championships that add in that season that added to their legacy of it were online, you have to bring it up. And I have to be fair to bring it up against FaZe when I was going to bring it up against the Dallas Empire and their online championship win. So I'm bringing it up for FaZe, and that's why I'm putting the Atlanta FaZe as the second best Call of Duty champion that we've had in the CDL. As you can imagine, the #1 championship team that we have had in the Call of Duty League is going to be OpTic Texas against the New York Subliners. This was, I felt like, everything that you needed in a true dominant championship fashion. We had dominating wins, Rio 250 to 130, an Invasion Search and Destroy 6-3, which is one of New York's best maps. And then you had close clutch moments. OpTic winning 6-5, OpTic winning 250 to 212, because that was a decent hard point, as well as winning the Invasion Control in a round 5 to win the championship. OpTic had so many moments where they clutched up, and to be able to see dominance and then clutch ability all in the same round, tournament was insane. In their tournament run, they did a reverse sweep against the LA Thieves, who are hot, and I mean, this team won a major in the regular season, and I have to give them the tip of the hat of doing the most unthinkable thing whenever they had the major 3 that they had, winning the major in Toronto, coming to major 4, going last place in the qualifiers. I mean, even losing to Boston, last place in the qualifiers, then getting last place at the major in major 4, to then bounce back and still be able to come on that run that they made and win Call of Duty champs. I mean, that is by far one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And to just be able to see a team do that, you definitely have to give them the tip of the hat and argue that they are probably the greatest Call of Duty champion that we may have had ever. But for this video, they are the greatest Call of Duty League champion that we have had since the Call of Duty League has been around. All right, and here you go. Here is my actual graphic. I've had the other stuff pulled up so we can kind of look at some statistics and stuff, but I have the actual graphic here pulled up. Call of Duty League World Championship rankings. We have OpTic #1, FaZe #2, New York #3, LA Thieves #4, and Dallas Empire #5. Let me know what you think about ranking these champions in the Call of Duty League. Remember, like I said, we will do a Call of Duty World League video separately from here, so make sure if you want to see that to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. It's been doing awesome lately. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace out.